Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. We are finally here at the end of April. Can you believe it? End of April. We're almost like halfway through quarter two, and it doesn't seem like any time at all since the beginning of this month when we were talking about your Q2 planning and reviewing. There were way too many different syllables there to try and combat. So given that we are at the end of April, one of the things that I want to touch on in detail today is about this idea of conversions. We talked a couple of episodes ago and I kind of touched on the fact that conversion and getting higher conversions is a bigger conversation. So that's what I want to make sure that we touch on in depth today, the ways that you can get better conversions, what you need to be focusing on, what you need to be tracking, all that kind of thing, to just make sure that you are in the right place to really sell effectively to your audience in a way that feels good for you, in a way that feels good for them, but most importantly, that actually converts the right amount of people, because there's lots of myths going around that I'm going to be busting on today's episode. It's going to be a fun one. I'm very excited. There are going to be a few points, and I'm going to be directing you to some other podcast episodes that touch upon some of the how-tos of this stuff, so that you can make sure that you're going back and re-listening to some episodes or just grabbing some of the top tips from them, so that you can actually start using this stuff today, because that's always helpful. So when we start talking about conversions, one of the first conversations that we really have to have is this idea of where do we actually struggle to convert in the first place? And it's about what step in the journey do we actually struggle with the conversion piece. So for example, if you really struggle to get more people on your email list, for example, that's a marketing conversion that you are struggling with. If you are struggling to sell, so if you're struggling to get people who are pre-existing on your email list, people who are following you on social media, if you're struggling to convert them, if you're offering them a clear sales post or a sales email or an offer and they are not buying, that's a sales conversion. So we have to start looking at what are the differences. Now, one of the stats that is prevalent in the online space is that 1 to 2% of your audience will buy. And that's true. That is a true statistic. 1 to 2% of your audience will buy during particular launches and things like that. What's probably a less known stat is that actually between 10 and 20% of your audience are in buying mode at the time that you are selling. Okay, so you actually have the potential to convert at 20%. Now, why do we not talk about this? Well, the reason we don't talk about it is because there are a multitude of reasons. One is that the average person is not going to convert at 20% all of the time. So actually it can be quite a difficult stat to put out there, and it can make people feel like they're going to fail. The interesting thing though is that in the sales world, so extraneously of the online space, when we talk about conversions, we talk about the average person being able to convert at 25%. Okay. Now, you're going to hear lots of different stats. The more you read, the more you listen to. Stats effectively are not as important as, proven strategy, taking action, self-belief in some cases, but they can give you a good guideline. So when we talk in the sales world about the average person is able to convert 25%, what we're talking about is generally sales calls. The average person is going to convert 1 in 4 sales calls to a yes. Okay. In the online space, when people are talking about this 1 to 2%, that's a stat that is not necessarily prevalent across other sales worlds. So it may not be true for your industry. It may not be true for your sales process. In terms of the online space, because there are such varied ways to sell, your conversion rate may indeed be 1 or 2% if you're using webinars, for example, as a sales tool, or even if you're using challenges. The reason being is that those things are not just designed to be sales tools, they're also designed to be list builds. So it has a lot to do with the warmth of your audience, how well you know them, how bought into you they are, whether or not you've done the right market research, whether you're actually selling the right product. There are so many things that fall into the conversion bandwagon. And so when you're talking to sales professionals, what they will tell you is that at any one time between 10 and 20% of your audience are ready to buy. Okay. And that's why I don't go down a die-hard route of it's this stat or it's that stat. There are so many varied, and it does depend on what sales process you choose. It depends on that warmth of your audience, the relationship you have with them, and whether or not you've run an effective sales process. Okay, so there are lots and lots of things to take into consideration. And this is one of the things, you know, that I guess as somebody who has been in sales, worked in sales, trained sales trainers, written a book on sales, and done a lot of stuff with regards to it, this is one of the things that frustrates me in the online world, where people go, I can teach you to sell more stuff. Because actually, a lot of the time, these people are going off generic information that they've got from one, maybe two sources. They're not actually going on information that is part of a process they've been through themselves. Often, you know, just because somebody can sell their own stuff, it does not mean that they can help you sell yours at all. It also doesn't mean that they necessarily have the skills to troubleshoot your issues when it comes to conversion. So when we talk about conversion today, this is, you know, there are so many different facets to it. And what I'm going to cover is the basics that you need to know and the things that you need to be aware of so that you can increase your conversions. But if you need to do extra work on this, regardless of whether you decide you want to work with me, you want to work with somebody else, please make sure they're actually qualified to help you. Okay. So don't go with somebody who says, I can help you improve your conversions, because you're probably only going to convert like 0.5% of your tiny list and makes you feel like you should never bother selling to them. Instead, go to somebody who's worked across, you know, or specifically in your industry, your discipline, who has multiple and varied experience with different clients, who can help you troubleshoot effectively. If somebody says, I've sold X amount of my own stuff, doesn't qualify them to be a salesperson. You know, it really doesn't. And I want to really stress that, because it's one of the things I've seen a lot of at the moment. And I think it's a really dangerous trend. The best salespeople do not necessarily sell their own stuff. And equally, people who are good at selling their own stuff are not always great at being able to teach other people. And the reason for that is because they have their own style, and they might be really good at identifying their own style, but they might be absolutely crap at identifying yours, at troubleshooting yours, and they will give you a formulaic process that ends up not producing the conversion level that you want. Okay, so when we are talking about sales and when we are diving deep on topics, make sure that you are tailoring this to your business, rather than just taking a formula and going, oh yeah, that'll probably be fine, it'll probably convert this. Because yes, we can look at numbers, yes, we can play around with certain things, only though once you have tested them. We cannot say that there is a true industry standard across coaching, for example, or web designers or whatever, on how many clients they will get on their conversion levels. What we can say is that once you've started testing it in your business, you can say, okay, well, I've increased my conversion rate from 10% to 25%, or I've increased my sales call conversion rate from, 12% to 30%. It's all about what you do with it. It's not about looking at an industry standard or a supposed industry standard and feeling like you should be disheartened or like that's all you're going to get. All right. And I think that sometimes that's how it can come across. So now we've got that like mini rant out of the way. We need to talk about how we can actually get more conversions and how we can convert better in an easier way. So for me, there are a few key elements that we need to look at when it comes to increasing our conversions. And obviously one of them is, where do we struggle to convert in the first place? Are we actually struggling with sales conversions, or are we struggling with marketing conversions? If we're struggling with marketing conversions, naturally, the knock-on effect from that is that we are going to have fewer sales conversions. However, it doesn't mean you're a bad salesperson, okay? So if you struggle to get marketing conversions and you get fewer sales conversions, that's because you're not building a relationship with people in the beginning that helps them know, like, and trust you quick enough to get them through your sales process. All right. So you can actually be a good salesperson and a good converter, but a poor marketer, and vice versa. You can be a great marketer and a really poor converter. Okay. And that's why we have to actually look at your statistics and your data, not just an industry standard. I know some great people out there who've had huge Facebook groups who've had huge email lists who've converted at less than 1%. I've known people to have, and this is a big topic recently, and I think has been a topic that's come up sporadically over the last couple of years. People who've had huge Facebook groups and they've shut them down, and the reason they've shut them down that they've cited is, well, they weren't making me money, or we were having to spend a ton of time keeping it open and stuff like that. So my thoughts on Facebook groups aside, we need to actually look at where your struggles with conversion are. So during this episode, I'm going to give you a few areas that you might want to focus on, and you can then go away and take that into your business and tailor it to you. Okay, so let's dive in. Exciting time. So once we've identified where do we struggle, marketing conversion or sales conversion, that's when we dive in. And today, all I'm talking about is sales conversions. All right. So if you are somebody who struggles with sales calls, finds that people end up ghosting you, struggles to convert during a launch, with your sales pages, all that kind of thing, this episode is full of the stuff you need to know. If, however, you're somebody who struggles to get people onto your email list, you find that your landing pages don't convert, your opt-ins, all that kind of stuff, we'll talk about that in future episodes. All right, I'll touch on some of the things because they're quite different and they're quite specific, and no conversion is the same. All right, so when we're talking about conversions, we need to have a process in place. And the thing is, when we talk about sales conversion specifically, we have to think about how we're setting ourselves up for success. Now, when we look at the quote unquote average statistics, we never really know how that person set their conversion process up. We don't know how they set up their sales journey. And so a lot of the time, people will miss out the key components. For example, market research is one of the easiest ways to increase your conversions, but it's not sexy. And people often don't count it as being part of the conversion process because they're like, oh, well, yeah, but I just did it. And then, it didn't have any bearing on the launch. Well, no, because if you didn't do that market research and you didn't know what your audience's biggest struggle was right now, would you have been able to create an offer that they actually wanted to buy? Maybe, maybe not. So when we're talking about conversions, we're talking about whole process. Okay, so start thinking about what is the beginning of my process. When we're talking about conversions, if you've got something that is not converting as well as you'd like, sales wise, we always go back to basics. Okay, do we know that this is something people actually want? Now, when we start talking about this and we start doing this market research, do we know that this is something people actually want? We also have to ask ourselves another question. Is this something I'm actually qualified to deliver? Because again, one of the things that will scrap your conversion rate through the floor that we don't talk about that often is the fact that if you are not qualified, or if you are not perceived to be qualified, or if you cannot end up delivering results, is that your conversion rates will hit the floor. Maybe not on this launch, but definitely on the next one. Okay, so conversion and sales conversion has multiple facets to it. And these are two of the most I don't know, can you say under talked about? I'm looking at myself like, no, but these are the two that people miss out on most often. They assume they don't count, but actually they do. When we look at why people buy or why they don't buy, people who don't buy will only ever have two reasons. Either they don't believe in you enough to deliver the result that they're looking for, or they don't believe in themselves. Okay, that's 98% of people. That's what they believe if they are not going to buy. Right? 2% of people, it's the money, and that is hard and fast, and there's nothing we can do about that. But for 98% of people, it's because they haven't been convinced that you can deliver the result, or that they are going to actually be able to achieve it themselves. All right. And that's where that market research comes in and is so important. And it's also why actually it's really important when we talk about conversions that you're selling stuff you're actually qualified to sell. Something that was interesting and that always has been interesting for me since I've been in the online world is that a few years ago, there was a spate of people who would be health coaches, and most of these people were really good health coaches. They take a lot of qualifications, they'd take their nutrition qualifications, they would do a lot of work, they would be out there, they'd be promoting. And then a few months later, you'd see them saying, oh, now I'm going to be a business coach for health coaches. And you're like, what? And it became this weird cycle of health coaches who went, yeah, but you know what? We're now in this online world and we see what we would like to buy and we see that we would like to make more money in our businesses. And actually our business isn't really where we want it to be. I think I could make more money being a business coach to other health coaches than I could make as a health coach to the end user that I originally was really passionate about helping. And it was this big, honestly, there were a lot of them. It wasn't like one or two. Literally, 80% of the health coaches I was seeing in my newsfeed, they would be amazing health coaches. And then 2 months later, they're like, oh, no, I'm going to be a business coach for health coaches now. I'm like, what? What are you doing? Crazy. And so we have to start, understanding that the world has become different and that actually our audiences have become, in some ways, much more cynical, and they want to buy from the experts. They don't want to buy from some random person who's like, I can do everything. They want to buy from the person who's been there, who's done it, and who has proven to make a difference. So I always use the analogy of the heart surgeon, right? You don't want the guy doing your heart surgery that's also like, but I can also give you LASIK and a boob job. That's just not what you want. You want the person who has studied for years, who is super qualified, who performs the cardiac surgery every day of the week. And it's no different for your audience. All right. So when we start thinking about conversions, one of the first things to think about, particularly if you struggle with both marketing and sales conversions, is, am I actually cohesive? Do people know what I do? And am I consistent? Or am I jumping around all the time? Is my content confusing? Am I talking about mindset 80% of the time, but then trying to sell them sales advice? Because if you are, that's going to impact your conversions, because positioning is a big part of conversion that we don't talk about. Okay. So we have to start with this point of going back to basics. So once we've looked at the market research, once we've decided, yes, we are actually selling the right stuff, we are super cohesive, my content is all about sales, I sell sales knowledge, great, I'm on a roll, then we need to start looking at, some of the practicalities that are involved with conversion. Now, the first one of these for me is about relationships. Are we building good relationships? Now, a lot of people are spending time on social media and they're on social media all the time. They're posting all the time. They're putting out content prolifically. They're getting a bunch of likes and shares and all this kind of stuff. But are they actually building good relationships? Are they replying to every comment they get? Are they actually engaging with their audience? Or are they removed from their audience? They kind of like behind this weird barrier of an email system that never gets a response. Yeah. Because when we're buying from people, even though, let's face it, I'm never going to email Tony Robbins, be like, hey, Tony, great interview for XYZ magazine, and expect a response from Tony himself. He's a very busy chap. He has a lot on. What I am going to expect is a process that makes me feel good and that makes me feel like I am valued as opposed to being a statistic. I also have that expectation that Tony Robbins is fairly celebrity-like. Okay. I have to say fairly because when I said to one of my friends, I was like, oh yeah, Tony Robbins. And they were like, who? So in the personal development world, Tony Robbins, celebrity. For everybody else, fairly celebrity, tall guy, has been on Shallow Hal, ergo, pretty famous. But I accept his celebrity status, so I'm not necessarily expecting him to be super accessible. But when I'm looking at a fitness coach, like a health coach, or somebody who I want to work with one-to-one, actually, I want to feel like I have a relationship with them. It's actually interesting because it's why podcasts work so well. When you're listening to a podcast, it's an intimate experience. I hate using the word intimate because it's just one of those awkward words where you think there must be something better to explain the relationship that I have being in somebody's ears, but there isn't really. It's quite an intimate experience because you are hearing that person's voice. You can hear when they're happy. You can hear when they're sad. You can hear when they're ranting. You can hear when they're frustrated, when they are genuinely passionate about something. It's real. It's also why video does quite well, particularly live streams. It's increased that ability to feel like you have access to that person. And that builds a different kind of relationship. Now, there are ways to feel and make your audience feel like you are accessible without you having to be on social media every second, answering 120 gazillion Facebook messages and doing all that jazz. That's not the way that I build my business, and it's not the way that I ever could work. I'd just be too overwhelmed. But the idea of building better relationships improves your conversion by a very large percentage. And the reason is that, as we all, quote each other all the time, we have to build know, like, trust with people. People buy from the people they know, like, and trust. So if we build good relationships with those people, it makes sense that they would buy from us more often, that they would buy from us quicker, and that they would buy at higher price points, because we have increased the amount of emotional currency that we have with that person. Okay. By emotional currency, I don't mean, blackmail. I mean, that person knows us, they like us, they trust us. We've built up a currency of mutual respect, hopefully, of likability, of accessibility, even if we are not there, even if we're not having a one-on-one conversation with that person. But there are ways that our content can interact for us that make us feel like we are. So one of the reasons that I'm working with Ali Brown this year is because I've listened to her podcast for literally years. 3 years at the gym, walking. Every time I've gone a long road trip, I've gone through her back catalogue of episodes. And so when I actually decided that, yes, now is the time that I want to up level in my business, there was nobody else that I wanted to go to. Had Ali ever sent me a personal email? No. Had she ever liked anything I'd put on Instagram? Nope. Had she ever commented on a Facebook post of mine or been found in a group that I was in? No, not at all. But through her podcast, I felt like I had this relationship with her, not necessarily because she commented on all my stuff, because she didn't, but because she shared the same values as me. She shares the same core values. She was making me think differently. She was challenging my thought processes. She was encouraging me to expand in my own development. And I wasn't seeing that content elsewhere, and that made me know, like, and trust her. And so when I wanted to spend my money on coaching and get a great experience and take my business to the next level, there was nobody else for me. So building better relationships, when I went through that sales process, I knew I was a yes. Right from the beginning, I was like, if I can afford it, if I can make it happen financially, I'm going to do that. And there is nobody else. Okay. So we have to start thinking, are we creating that and cultivating that kind of relationship with our clients? Are we building those good relationships? And that's not about, how many times can I be on social media? What kind of posts can I put up that make people laugh? What emotional triggers can I tap into that's going to make them engage with my content more? It's genuinely about, when you're putting out quality content, is it content that serves the purpose of building the relationship? Does it add value to that person? Does it make them think differently? Do you share the same values? Do they like you? Does that piece of content make them like you, or at least respect you, right? I don't have to like everyone I work with, not in terms of clients. I do have to like you guys, but I don't have to like every coach I've ever worked with. If I can respect them, if I can learn from them, and if I know they have the same core values that I do. And that's something that's generally expressed in their content, okay? So we have to start thinking, in order to prep ourselves for getting the best conversions, we have to build those better relationships. How can we do that? How can we make our audience feel more in tune with us and with what we're doing? The next thing is more practical. Are we asking for the sale? Lots of people talk to me about sales conversions. They say, oh, I'm so low. My sales conversions are so low. But when we actually look at how often they've sold versus how many products or services they've sold and how many people they've converted, they actually do really well. And the problem is not in the conversion rate. It's in how often they're asking for the sale, and in the fact that they're not always happy with the money that they're making because they're not selling often enough. Okay. So again, another thing that can actually help our conversion rates is to ask for the sale more often. You can also look at this another way. You can look at this and say, well, it could also destroy my conversion rate, because if I'm selling all the time, then my audience will always feel sold to, and then they're going to leave. They're going to go and follow someone else. Yes, you will have a smaller audience. The more often you sell, the smaller audience you'll probably have, in all honesty, until you get to fairly celebrity status, i.e. Tony Robbins, and everybody is just like, no, I just have to buy your stuff. And that's okay, because those people who leave your audience because you're asking for the sale slightly more often, they weren't going to buy anyway. That's why they've left. They want somebody else to follow. They want other free content. Yours was not hitting the spot for them. And that's okay. All right. So we can ask for the sale more often. That trains our audience to know that we are going to consistently ask for the sale. We're going to add value, but we're also going to consistently ask for the sale. And it helps improve our conversion rates because it means that people in our audience understand that we are okay with selling and that we like to sell and that we like to offer them every opportunity to have some kind of transformation or change that's really going to impact them. All right. Now, the third thing is about following up. And there are kind of two arms to this. So there is the follow-up after a sales call, and again, if you want to check out the episode I did on follow-ups, you can scroll back through the back catalogue and find the episode that I did on the ways to follow up if you've had a sales call. It's the ghosting episode, so you can get some ideas there on what you should actually be saying and how you can increase those conversions and the scripts that you can use. But we have that scenario. So we have, how can we increase our conversions? Well, firstly, when it comes to sales calls, we can start asking for the sale on the call. We can ask for people to pay us on the call. But we also have to accept that some people will not, and that we have to be okay with following up. And how many times do we want to do that? And how do we want to say it so that it feels good for us, it doesn't feel sleazy or scammy or gross, but also that it sets a clear boundary with the other party and helps them make the best decision in the most timely manner. Okay. Now, again, if you want scripts and stuff for that, go to the ghosting episode and the follow-up episode, and you will be able to grab those thoughts directly from my brain and use those to help you follow up more successfully when it comes to post-sales call follow-up. That will also help you increase your conversions, right? Because following up after a sales call, if somebody said they're going to buy and they don't, it means that they're nervous about something. It means they need reassurance. So actually that follow-up can give them the reassurance that you're going to keep them accountable, that you're going to, keep them on track, that you care about their decision. That can make people feel really good, and that can increase that conversion rate. The other kind of follow-up is actually, I guess, a little more stalky in a way, but are you actually following up with people who are taking actions? No. Are you actually noticing the actions that people take and following up on them? So for example, one of the things that always surprises people is that in my business, if I notice that somebody clicks a link on my email and I notice that they haven't then gone and taken an action from it, I'll send them a personal email and be like, hey, I noticed that you clicked through to join this challenge, but you didn't. Just a reminder, it's still here if you want to join us. How many times do you send out emails and just never look at the click-through rate? You never look at what they actually clicked, when, why? And how many times have you ever followed up with them and said, hey, I noticed that you clicked this, but you didn't do it, or you didn't join it, or you didn't book your call? That's a different kind of follow-up. And it's one, arguably, that takes more confidence, but can really improve your conversions. And again, for all of the reasons above, it helps build a better relationship. People know that you care. People know that actually you take an interest. One of the things that when I first had my business, I used to do a lot was my email list is quite small, and I would email out to my list once a month, and I'd let my top subscribers know that they're my top subscribers. I'd be like, hey, this month you opened every single one of my emails. I really appreciate that. And it made people feel valued, so start thinking about how you could be following up with people to increase your conversion, not just from a practical, okay, I need to follow up with them 3 times post-sales call, but also what am I not currently tracking, or what am I not noticing about the actions they're taking and not following up on that actually I could be, that actually I do have the time to be. Now, you don't have to do it at the same level as me. Like, you might not have the time to go around and be like, who's my top subscriber this month? And that's cool. But if you want to make more money and you do have time, and time is the resource that you're currently able to use most of, then it's definitely something to think about, because it will push you out of your comfort zone, but also it will help you build that better relationship with your audience and help you create better conversion rates. The other thing we have to think about is the areas of sales that we struggle to convert. So sales call conversion is something I get a lot of questions about. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, but you haven't checked out episode 1 yet, which is all about never hear another no on a sales call, make sure you go and have a look. Or a listen. Like, make sure you go and have a look. You can't really look at a podcast episode, but make sure you take a listen, because again, that is a process that is designed to help you convert more. And, we've had multiple people, including one of my very favorite clients, Sarah, who have taken their sales call conversion rates from, literally 15% to above 30%, and then higher and higher still, just through using that process. Now, you have to imagine what the difference would mean to you. If you sell £1,000 product and you currently convert 1 in 4 sales calls, that means you're losing £3,000. Every 4 sales calls, you're losing £3,000. If you can up your sales call conversion rate to 50%, you're not doing any extra work, but you're making another £1,000. You're making £2,000 instead of 1. You've upped your revenue by 50%. Yeah, that's a lot. And we have to start thinking about that, because when we start talking about, work less, make more, blah, 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 we forget about the basics. If you're going to be sat on 4 sales calls anyway, you might as well make it your goal to convert more of them. It's always interesting for me, and again, this is where this idea of statistic comes in. People who sell on the phone, who have discovery call processes, will always sell more. They will always convert higher, because they are able to tailor that process. They're able to make it bespoke. They're able to make people feel good. So not only can they actually sell higher priced products and services in an easier way, they also convert higher. So if you don't currently have sales calls on your agenda, then, I don't care how popular Facebook Messenger is or how much easier it feels, give it a go. See whether you could be currently leaving money on the table, see whether you could be making more, and actually enjoying the process, getting in touch with your audience. Another thing we have to look at is sales pages and how well sales pages convert. And people always talk about this and they're like, okay, your average good sales page should convert at 20%. And yeah, that's fine. 20% is good. But again, you have to maximize that success. So if your sales page isn't converting at 20%, again, we start working back through that process. Okay, did we do the market research? Did people actually want that? Are we sending the right traffic to it? Are the people who are going to it warm as opposed to cold? Because there'll be big differences between both of them. Have people followed me for something else and now I'm selling them this? That will mean that I get a lower conversion rate. Equally, have I been selling this for so long that people are just tired of hearing about it and they want something different? Am I listening to my audience and what they need right now? One of the things that used to happen when I was working in corporate sales was that we would be selling the same thing all the time, again and again and again. And it wasn't that the customers didn't want it, it was that we got bored of selling it. So you'd see amazing salespeople go through these droughts because they just got bored of selling the same thing. And when that happened, we try and move them to a new industry or a new discipline, because they would be reignited with a passion to sell, a passion to prove themselves. And they wouldn't be necessarily selling, even though they're selling the same product or service potentially, they would be selling it to different people. And so they would be taking in different information and it would be more interesting. So you can always start thinking about that. If you are plateauing at a sales level, perhaps you've actually mastered that. Perhaps you're bored of selling it. How could you make it more interesting for yourself? I'm not saying go out and change industries and change your business by any means, but how could you make it more interesting for you? How could you be more interested in the process? How could you make it more unique? Perhaps you implement an application process. We're still accepting applications for Evolve for the next couple of days, literally until the end of the month. And one of the things for me that's been really interesting about that process is that it's allowed me to step back and be really objective and give feedback to people. So when people have been applying for it, if they haven't been right, I've been able to go back to them and say, hey, look, you're not the right fit for Evolve for XYZ reason. To get yourself to the point where you are, you would want to be focusing on XYZ things. So I can give value to people, even if they're not the right fit right now, that's fine. Equally, for the people who are really interested in Evolve and who are the right fit, going through that application process has actually made them want it more. It's solidified for them the reasons behind why they're doing it. It's made it more interesting for them. And so for that reason, actually the conversion on Evolve as a program so far has been hugely high and, is quadruple, the 10 to 20% stat that I shared with you earlier, because it's all highly qualified traffic, warm traffic, people who are really interested. The market research was done. The sales process is tailored, it's bespoke. Everybody gets individual advice, individual feedback on if it's the right program, if it's not, why it would meet their needs, why it wouldn't. There aren't many processes like that out there. And so it makes it stand apart. It's a higher level experience. And this is what we need to be thinking about when it comes to conversion. Yes, there's a certain amount of change this headline, make your copy more compelling, say these things, but it's a process of evolution. It's not a one-stop shop. It's not improve your sales page and you're going to boost your conversions by 2%. Well, yes, you might do, but actually you could increase your conversions by 10% if you just went back and did your market research and started actually talking about the stuff that people wanted on your sales page. So, without sounding like go back to basics all the time, go back to basics. It's really well worth it. And conversion is a huge topic, and it's one of those things that I could literally do entire podcast episodes, and I'm happy to do them if people want to hear more about specific areas of conversions for, sales pages, or you want me to talk more in detail about the kinds of things that can wreck a sales call or whatever, just email me, let me know. That's what I'm here to do. But it's always about the process. How am I making people feel like a valued person throughout this process so that they can know, like, and trust me, and make it easy for them to buy, and to buy into the transformation that I can give them, to buy into the product or program that I'm selling, and to buy into me and themselves. That's what conversion really is. Now, it is only a couple of days left to still apply for Evolve. So if you are interested in being part of this first wave of Evolvers for 2019, make sure that you head over to smartlytosell.com/evolve, where you can pick up your application for Evolve, get a few more details on what the program is about. But if you're somebody who is looking to make 6 figures within the next 12 months, and you want to do it in a balanced way that actually builds a successful and sustainable business, Evolve is going to be the right fit for you. So make sure you head over there, smartlytosell.com/evolve, if you are serious about making 6 figures within the next 12 months. I will see you in Friday's episode. I hope this has been useful on conversions. As always, feel free to hit me up on Instagram and share your discoveries, share your takeaways, and anything else that you would like to share about today's episode, or just, about Smartly to Sell podcast in general. I will see you on Friday. We have another awesome guest, which I'm really excited about. And in the next Monday episode, it will be May. Oh my goodness. I'm also thinking that because it is May, here we go, I'm just recording this. Oh, it's not going to be. Damn it. I thought it was going to be May the 4th be with you, but maybe I'll just have to say a belated May the 4th welcome to you on that episode. So I will see you in May officially. I will see you on Friday's episode. And as always, any takeaways that you want to share with me, head over to Instagram and feel free to share away. I'll see you on Friday.